On today's podcast, I'm joined by John Foster, founder of Foster's Financial. We cover what separates good agents from great ones and how to grow without burning out, and why understanding the wider financial picture, especially in today's mortgage market, can help clients secure a better property, not just a mortgage. Hope you enjoy the episode. If you're an estate agent that wants to stay ahead of the competition and to make more profits, then you need to talk to Iceberg Digital. Iceberg doesn't just sit alongside your CRM system, it replaces it. It's the UK's leading AI operating CRM system for estate agents, combining your CRM system, prospecting, marketing, website, and compliance all in one ecosystem. Your CRM system becomes fully automated, taking care of those repetitive tasks your team shouldn't be doing. Your prospecting runs 24/7, scanning the portals, capturing property addresses, matching them with your database, and sending them personal outreach faster than any human ever could. Your marketing is automatically written to match your tone of voice. Blogs, property descriptions, vendor updates, all done for you. And your website becomes AI driven, adapting to each visitor in real time and making your agency discoverable on Google and also on tools like ChatGPT. Agents across the UK are already using Iceberg to run a leaner, smarter, and more profitable business. Visit icebergdigital.co.uk and mention the Estate and Consultancy podcast when you book your demo to get an exclusive perk. John, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
No, you're a fantastic guest. Thank you for coming on. So talk me through. How did you get started in the property game? So I know obviously you're very big in the financial service. You're like Mr. Mortgage these days, but obviously it hasn't always been that way. How did you first get going back when you first got things up and running?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I sort of fell into it, if you like. I left school with diddly squat and not wanting to sit behind a desk all day, which is rather ironic. I went to be a plumber. So I started in a career in plumbing. I went into an apprenticeship, but at the same time, I had a part-time job at Lloyd's TSB, and I absolutely loved it. I loved the getting customers in front of what was like the account managers or whatever, the thrill of the deal. I really enjoyed it. I saw a pound note and off I went. And so I was doing that on like, in my spare time, really, on weekends and whatever, from about age 16. And I was about 2 weeks into this plumbing apprenticeship, and I spent an entire 2 weeks in the classroom learning about health and safety and what I should be doing and shouldn't be doing. I hadn't actually been out into the actual real world, and I was thinking, this is exactly what I didn't want. And I got a call from the bank manager and said, "Look, John, we've got a full-time position. We'd love to have you. Do you want it?" And I sort of walked out there and then, much to my mother's dismay. She was very upset about it for sure. But hopefully she forgives me now. But yeah, much to her annoyance, I went off and started my career at Lloyds DSB, and then did a number of things, cashiering through to account management, branch manager, all that sort of stuff. And then I found Spice of Heart, and I went to do mortgages for them. So that's really where it properly started.
Mm.
Um, and I worked for Spices for probably 4 or 5 years, something like that. And I absolutely loved it. I loved the competition. I loved agency. I loved everything about it. Um, and sometimes, employers like that in the corporate world get a mixed review, but I am very happy to say on record that I absolutely loved my time there. They treated me very, very well. Don't get me wrong, I did an awful lot of business for them over many, many years, but they treated me very well and took me all over the world and gave me fancy cars to drive and all of the, as you can probably see, all of the things that ticks John's boxes. So, yeah, I love my time there, but with the family and whatever else, I realised that I needed to get some time back, and they're not big into providing assistance and all that sort of stuff. So, at 2016, I set up Foster's Financial, which is the business I own today, to sort of bring that uh, corporate offering to the independent world from a financial services point of view. I've answered the question in a very long way there, Chris.
No, that's a good answer. I was getting flashbacks to my granddad then. I remember my granddad talking to me when I was about 14 years old. And he's like, if you want a job for life, make sure you get a trade. That was like the life advice going there.
So yeah, I mean, if anyone's ever met me, I'm like 6'4.5", 6'5". I'm not a small chap, so I don't know why I thought climbing rent and lofts and bathrooms was going to be a great choice, but there we go. We make these decisions, eh?
If anything, paint and decorator was right there. Those ceilings aren't too far away. If anything, that would have been the route. So talk me through. So you're at Spice of Heart. You enjoyed being there. What was the 'Cause usually something that ticks over in most people's kind of minds or mind space where they go, "Okay, I've worked for these guys for a long period of time, and then it's kind of time for me to do my own thing." Was there anything particular that kind of, sort of hit you or happened that you kind of thought,
Yeah.
"Actually, I need to move on?"
I mean, I think it's probably quite normal for most people, but the catalyst was, I was doing loads of business. I was top 3 in the country for them out of, I don't know what they had at the time, 150 advisors or something like that. Um, and I was doing more and more, or I'm working more and more hours. And, I said, "Look, I just need some help. I need someone to do all of these admin tasks and get through some stuff for me." Their solution in their wisdom was not to give me someone to help me with the workload, but it was to put another advisor in my office so that I didn't have as much to do. So that was probably the straw that broke the camel's back, in answer to the question.
Okay, so you've obviously worked through a lot of market cycles, to say the least. With the agents you kind of refer across to you and kind of the top performing agents you've kind of worked alongside, what do you think kind of makes them different from agents that maybe don't kind of have that same sort of drive and the same sort of achievement?
Yeah, well, God, there's probably a long list, but if I was to try and pinpoint it into one exact thing, it would be proactivity, I think. It would be, you know, making the phone ring, not waiting for it to ring. Um, and, when most people start their journey at some point in some sort of corporate business, and this mentality of, what's your done and booked? How many have you got in the week ahead? How many did you see the week behind? There's something about that. And I'm a big believer in the harder you work, the luckier you get. And what I mean by that is the more you do, the more that will come out of it. So I think in answer to your question directly, uh, the agents that we work with that are the most successful are the ones that find a way to get it done and not a reason why it can't be done.
Mm, I love that. And did you have a plan B when you launched Foster's Financial? Did you think, okay, this doesn't work out, I'll go back to Spice of Heart, or what was the kind of the plan B option there?
No, I didn't really have a plan B. In fact, I had a plan A. Um, and then, they put me on gardening leave straight away, and 2 weeks into my gardening leave, I got a knock at the door, and I remember distinctively, it was I can't remember, it was, let's say DPD, but it was one of those types with a big brown cardboard thing, which was filled with paper, which is just Spice Heart's way of telling me all of the things that I wasn't allowed to do over the next 12 months.
Mm.
So the plan that I had was sort of kiboshed. I wasn't allowed to open in the same town that I worked in, so I went to a different town to open, and did my business from there. So no, there was never a plan B. It was always, "Let's make this work."
And in hindsight, how important is that sort of ethos and mindset? Because I see, one of the things I talk to people when kind of have initial discovery calls, them I say, look, this estatecy stuff doesn't work out. What's your sort of plan B? And generally, if someone says, oh, if it doesn't work out, I'll go work at Connell sort of thing, then really they're probably not the client for me because I want people who are like, this is going to work. Like it's non-negotiable. So how important do you reckon is that having that mindset where you're like, this is like it's this or death, basically?
Yeah, I mean, for me, there would be nothing worse than having to go back with my tail between my legs and say, "Look, I've tried it, but it's not worked." Because you can always make something work. It's just about an attitude, that can do that I spoke about a minute ago. So having a plan B is a great idea. As long as that plan B isn't, "I'm just gonna give up and go back to what I was doing." If that plan B is, "I'm gonna knock on doors in a different way, or I'm going to do social in a different way, or I'm going to do email marketing, or now I'm going to try B2B networking, or whatever that is." Plan Bs are fine. In fact, I've done plan B, C, D, E, F, and all of the alphabet. But I don't think you should ever give up and just say, well, look, I'm going to give this a try. And for me, if anyone ever uses those words, I'm going to give it a try, I think that's a fairly good indication of they haven't really got what it takes.
And give people who are listening in sort of the size of Foster's Financial now, like how, as a company, how many advisors do you have? What sort of scale operation you've got there?
Yeah, so we've got a team of 12, and that's made up of an advisor team. So we have a mortgage and protection advisor team, but we also have a protection only advisor team, because protection is a very specialist subject. So we have people that specialize in that. They're backed up by a management team. So I have a head of protection, a sales and development director, and a sort of operations manager who runs the back office team. And that's the fourth team that we've got is a back office team.
And what
And
made
they're all based from Colchester. And I travel up and down all the motorways in England, seeing everyone.
what made you want to grow the business to that size? 'Cause I'm sure you've probably got aspirations to grow bigger, I would imagine. But
Yep.
what surely the easiest thing for you to do in hindsight was to be kind of, one advisor, one admin, whatever it may be, and that would be it. Kind of be a one-person band and you know everything that's going on. What drove you and motivated you to build it to the size it's at today, and obviously then to keep growing it as well? What drove you to that?
Well, to be honest, it was never the intention. So I only ever started Foster's in order to give me some stuff back, some time back, some flexibility back, and more earnings, if I'm brutally honest. Um, but what it turned into is actually, do you know what? I really enjoy this, and I'm now getting agents coming and asking to work with us. They want to refer people to us, and it's grown. And then probably 2 or 3 years in, I thought, right, I can really make something of this, and I need to go about it with a proper plan and a proper plan of action. And then I started working with coaches, which I'd highly recommend to anyone in business. You must have a coach who's going to challenge you and hold you accountable. And I've worked with lots of those over the years. Um, and yeah, you're absolutely right. I'm on a scale phase, so I'm on a 3-year plan at the minute. Well, I've got 3 years left, which takes me to December 2028, in order to grow Foster's into a bigger beast, hopefully.
This is a weighted question if I held it. So obviously you mentioned about the value of coaches on that side. So I've got a business coach from my business. I have done for the last couple of years or so, who pretty much exactly as you said, they basically just gives me grief pretty much, and they just tear me a new one every other week sort of thing, and push me on my way sort of thing. How how valuable has that been to have that sort of external voice say to you, actually, you think you're doing great, but if you did this and this, you could be amazing. Or actually, you're doing terrible at this, and if you do this, you'd be better. How kind of valuable has that been to yourself over the time you're growing your business?
Invaluable. And I appreciate it's a weighted question, but I am
Very
answering it
much so.
honestly. Um, you know, I would never have got Foster's to where it is without those independent experts challenging me and holding me to account. I would never ever have got there. Um, as business owners, we have the best job in the world because no one's going to tell us we've not done enough, um, and no one's going to pull the rug from under our feet. We're the only ones that can do that. Um, but the reality is, if you haven't got someone challenging you, holding you account, and getting momentum, you just don't achieve as much as quickly. You might not get there in the end, but I would never have got Foster's to where it is without working with coaches over the last 10 years.
It is funny that people not saying no to you because I'll be a bit cryptic here because it hasn't been announced yet at all. But I'm with a group of people on a board that I've just been kind of made part of effectively, and
Very exciting.
we had our first video call the other day, and it was strange being in a room of other business owners where I'm kind of quite used to getting my own way and quite used to saying like, no, 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 this is what we're doing. And they're like, no, no, we're not doing that. We're doing this instead. I'm like, oh, actually, people can say no to me now, and actually I haven't got like carte blanche to do whatever I want in those conversations. So I think there's definitely a value in sort of being put back into line and kind of going, no, 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 you think you're this, but actually you're not. This is what you should be doing, and then you can get to that.
Couldn't agree more. And I do a mastermind program quite regularly, which is sit in a room with other business owners, exactly what you described there. Um, and we challenge each other on what we're doing and how we're thinking and why we've thought a certain way and why we've made certain decisions. Because ultimately, whether you own a financial services business, an estate agency business, or a hairdresser, we've all got exactly the same problems. They've just got a slightly different story, but the nuts and bolts of it are exactly the same. And being in a room with people that have been there, done it, worn the t-shirt, and had the same problem as you last week, and this is what they did with it. You can't put a price on that.
Yeah, I've always found it quite funny how, no matter which businesses you look at, there's always the same problem. So one of my friends does lead generation for tech companies, a big company, and he kind of puts bolts offices on the side of it. And I can sit down quite happily and have a conversation, even though I know, tech-wise, I can turn my computer on, I can use ChatGPT sort of thing. But with regard to like tech sales, I've really got a clue in the grand scheme of things. But we can, instead of having, client care, instead of vendor updates, it's client care sort of thing. Unless instead of valuations, it's discovery calls sort of thing. Like, the language is slightly different, but, like, pretty much it's the same sport.
Still use feel, felt, found, right?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, 100%. That's the thing.
Maybe a more modern version, but we still use it in a way.
Good. So you've grown your business quite in a quick way, which I think is really great to see. And one thing that I've always admired you from afar is that you're a good personality. You're active on things like social media, for example. You put yourself out there. You kind of got the personal brand direction for it as well, which I think estate agency, financial services, whatever industry you can be in. There's always there's a pressure to have a personal brand, but there's also it's easy to avoid as well. It's easy to be like, "Oh, I won't bother, I'll do that video tomorrow." So how important has sort of personal brand been for you growing the business?
I mean, I would say very. It's, getting to know, like, and trust someone, right? And if you can see inside their world and know a little bit more about John or about Chris, about what else they do, I think it adds real value. It's interesting you say that. I don't think my personal brand is anywhere near where it should be, and there's a plan for 2026 to elevate that a little bit more. But the first step is doing the one video or the one post, and you look back at that video or one post that you did 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 years ago, um, and you can just see the journey that you've come on and how different they are. But you, it is massively important in this modern era. It's the advertorial of old that you used to put in the papers.
Can we talk about mortgages? Because
Please can.
I know
We have
probably
to.
but no, we absolutely have to. The reason why is because you can't have Mr. Mortgages on your podcast and not talk about mortgages. I feel like I'd be missing a trick and I'd get some hate
Okay.
mail
Yeah,
in the post. In the same way
I'll
you
make
got
it as interesting as I can.
No, but in the same way you got the DPD man to get the paperwork over, I would get a box full of complaints in the mail. So let's talk mortgages. I very much aware we can't go into a huge amount of detail with regard to individual rates and what people get approved and what won't they get approved. What's the overriding sort of sentiment in the mortgage market at the moment? Is it getting more affordable for people? Is it getting worse? What's the flow?
Okay. So, look, sentiment is positive. Beta rate is slowly coming down. Uh, if I'm honest, my view on that, based on what the lenders tell us and me, is that they've already factored in that and they know it's coming, and they've probably got an idea as to whether there's going to be 2 or 3 cuts in 2026, and they've priced that in. So in 2026, I don't think you're going to see a massive downward trajectory in terms of mortgage rates, but lenders want to lend. They are, we do a fair volume of business, and they are constantly talking to us about things that they're going to innovate on, in order to move things forward. Because if you don't innovate, you evaporate, and they want to make sure that they are front and center of where the mortgage lending in the UK is going in 2026. So lenders want to lend. They're aggressive on criteria. There's normally a bit of a rate fight when they realise they've not hit their lending targets for the year. So you tend to see a little bit more of an increased downtrend in rates towards the second half of the year, um, but they're in a positive place. And I would say that lenders want to lend. And what it would appear, I appreciate we're only on the 14th as we record it now. I'm dating the podcast now, aren't I? Sorry, Chris. But as we record it now, we're on the 14th, and it feels very good out there. I've been out and seen a lot of our introducers already. They're all talking very positively. They're getting lots of inquiries from buyers. So it feels like everyone's feet are pointing in the right direction, and everyone wants to get on with things now and not sit on their hands, which is what we had a little bit at the end of 2025.
So what's sort of emerging? So you mentioned obviously, the banks want to lend effectively. What's coming out there at the moment? Because did I see, I'm very grey on the details here, and you'll pick me up on this. There was a bank, might have been Lloyds TSB if you really pushed me on it, and they were doing extra multiples if you're in certain jobs and certain careers. I think it was like 6 times if you were in these positions, sort of thing, with different
Yeah.
companies. Is that becoming more of a thing?
So, look, if I can give you a sales answer for a moment, if you'll allow me. So, those have always been there, but it's about your broker, whoever you deal with. And I know a fantastic one if anyone needs one. But it's about your broker knowing which lender is going to be the best. Look, which lender is, sorry, your broker knowing which lender is going to be best for you. Um, so, what lenders like is professional type jobs. So, doctors, nurses, healthcare, anything in that arena, lawyer, those sorts of things. And for those, what they perceive to be more trusted jobs, that they do tend to have a bigger multiple of lending. There are lenders out there that will go to 6. Um, I can't say the lender because I'm not 100% sure, but I'm sure one of the guys was telling me the other day there's someone even at 6.5 at the moment. So that, they are, for the right client, they are wanting to lend in a big way.
Because I think that the this is gonna sound very like a patronizing dick thing to say. The people that I feel sorry for in today's market is someone was living on their own as a single person, they didn't have a boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife, whatever it may be, and they were looking to buy their first property on their own sort of thing. I think to myself, short of your mum and dad giving you a shed load of money really quickly, you are gonna struggle with regard to average salaries. And obviously, once you've got obviously your partner and you've got joint incomes, obviously life gets a little bit easier. But if you're on your own, I mean, you're generally I wouldn't say stuffed, but it's certainly a sticky wicket to be on.
It's certainly more difficult. It is certainly more difficult. Again, if you're in that professional services type role, then there are more options. What we do as brokers is look at how other ways we can find to get around the problem. So things like looking at a guarantor, perhaps things that there's something called a joint borrower sole proprietor, which is where you borrow in two people's names, but only one person's name is on the deeds and therefore stamp duty and et cetera, et cetera. Um, so our job as brokers is to try and actively find a way around these problems within the rules, etc., to make it hard. Because you are absolutely right. If you are a single person on a average wage of, I don't know what the exact average wage is right now, late 20s somewhere. If you're on that, y- yeah, it's very difficult to get on the market.
So if you were so obviously a big blocker for lots of self-employed agents, ironically getting on the housing ladder and moving up the housing ladder is the fact they are a self-employed estate agent. So what are some of the things that agents can do to help themselves out? So if I was a self-employed agent listening to this thinking, oh, I might move home in a few years' time or buy my first home in a few years' time, what sort of things should they be looking to have in place so when they go for that mortgage application in a couple of years' time or 6 months' time, they can pass with flying colours rather than get turned away?
So work with your accountant on a monthly or quarterly basis to make sure that your figures are correct, and make sure that you are achieving the net profit that you want to achieve. If you Obviously, I'm not an accountant, so I can't give advice on this, but if a limited company is the appropriate method of managing your affairs, then there's things that you can do with regards to retain profit and dividends and all of that sort of stuff. And, speak to one of the guys in the office or another mortgage broker that you know and trust, and they will guide you through that. Um, it's really about getting your ducks in a row early on, knowing when the goal is and knowing what you need to do to get there. That what you need to do bit will be different for everyone, but broadly speaking, it's about managing your accounts properly, um, managing them so that they portray you in a positive position, and any broker and accountant worth their salt will guide you through that.
So I guess it's tough. You spend half your life being self-employed, trying to justify the fact you earn nothing, and I earn the basic amount, and don't want to pay tax, etc. But then for that one time a year, or one time every 10 years or so, when you want a mortgage application, you actually want to be like, oh, I'm as rich as possible, and actually, it's actually going really well. You do a kind of a complete U-turn.
Yeah, absolutely. That is the hole that people get caught in sometimes is that, there's some very, very clever accountants out there which will help you keep tax bills as low as possible, legitimately within the rules of the land, et cetera, et cetera. Unfortunately, that doesn't really help from a lending point of view, which is why I say you need to work with your accountant and make sure that it's going in the right direction.
So talk me through, because I think that financial services is probably the one of the most underrated income sources for agents in the UK, full stop. I think there's a enormous amount of money to be made by estate agents for financial services. Why do you think that agents aren't necessarily as good as they should be when it comes to referring across to mortgage advisors? Because you think that a large percentage of people you meet probably getting a mortgage, depending on what sort of property you're selling, etc. But that seems like it's really low hanging fruit. But lots of agents go, I won't bother asking. They're probably sorted already. Oh, they've got a friend who's a financial advisor. Why do agents hold back from asking the question when they could make literally hundreds of pounds from just a quick chat?
Well, that comes back to the first question you asked, or the second question you asked around why do some agents get really successful and some agents don't? And it all comes back to that finding a way or finding an excuse. Um, financial services is the main revenue stream in any corporate estate agent. They make more money out of financial services than they do out of any other of the things that they do, whether that's estate agency sales, estate agency lettings, conveyancing, whatever. Um, when I used to work in corporate, you were targeted at £250,000 profit from financial services a year
Um,
from one advisor. Now, quarter of a
so
million pounds profit for some of your clients would make a massive difference.
so
I
why
do not understand why you don't spend that extra minute getting to really understand their clients' needs so that they can make the right and appropriate recommendations for them.
God, that's good. I mean, £250,000 profit for an advisor is amazing, and I think that for the average agent listening to this, effectively just saying how have you got to that figure, or what's the plan for your mortgage, and do you want to see if you can save some money? Sort of quite easy questions could be worth quite a lot of money. I think that the figure that I've always tried to do myself is I've always tried to make about £1,000 per instruction I bring on the market, and that's in solicitors as well, but most of it comes from financial services, that kind of the higher paying part of it. But I think if you've got that sort of corporate mindset of I need to speak about financial services, I need to speak about solicitors, even though you haven't got a boss behind you shouting at you from the back desk and throwing a stapler at you. If you still keep that mindset going forward when you run the business as well, like the sky's the limit.
Yeah, absolutely. And, forget about the money. You owe it to your clients and you owe it to yourself. You're spending hours and hours with these people trying to find them a home that they might not be able to afford, that they might not be able to get a mortgage on, that there might be this problem that they haven't spoken to anyone about, that they can't do it, particularly in January. There's so many people out there that want to move in 2026 that are viewing properties. How many hours are we wasting showing people around properties they can't afford? Why don't we make sure that we've given them the proper advice and we're showing them the right property for their budget? Um, why don't we make sure that we're not letting our vendors down by making sure that the people that we're wrapping up deals to are in a proceedable position?
No, I think that
There's
is
hours and hours of time there that everyone wastes every week of every month just by not asking those couple of questions in the right way that will just add so much benefit to you other than the pound note.
mm. I've always found when it comes to financial services, when a member of staff is new or they're new to sort of estate agency, they're really good at financial services. You're like, just ask these guys, how have they got their money sorted into, do they want to save some money on the mortgage? They're like, yeah, fine, no problem at all. I'll just ask the question. Then over time, sort of they get some no's, and then eventually they're like, oh, I won't bother asking. It's probably going to be a no anyway. And they kind of like gaslight themselves into not asking. And
Yeah.
it's only a select few who actually go, no, 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 I need to keep asking this question because I'm, getting paid for it, or it makes me a better estate agent. So if I always find that sort of newer people to estate agency are great at financial services, and then over time, those no's sort of take their time to eventually they run their own business and go, woohoo, I don't do financial services anymore, even though that's the wrong direction to go in.
100%. And they
Go,
get no's when they knock on doors or when they go around and do valuations. Um, but they find a way to either make peace with it or overcome it. And that's exactly what you need to do on anything else you sell.
so, final question, 'cause you've been very generous with your time, to say the least. If you could go back in time and speak to yourself X amount of years ago when you first started in sort of the property world, what would be the one bit of advice you'd give yourself?
Okay. So I think the one bit of advice I'd give myself is that you will overestimate what you can achieve in a year, but you will massively underestimate what you can achieve in 5 or 10 years. And I think getting to that 10-year point or that 5-year point and looking back at what you've achieved, you'll be very, very happy with it. But perhaps looking at years in on their own merit, sometimes you feel frustrated, or I certainly do. And I think that would have really helped me over the years.
It's almost that Warren Buffett expression, isn't it, about the stock market. He's going, if you look on a short term window, yes, it's probably going to go up and down, and who knows what it's going to do. But I know that I look back in 10 years' time, I know it's almost certainly going up. So, John, you've been an amazing guest. Thank you so much for coming on today.
Pleasure.